Order the special city council meeting of February 24th, 2025, the strategic planning workshop. Madam Secretary, do we have a quorum?
Yes, Mayor, we do.
All right. Order, please. Thank you. All right. Next, please.
Next is item 2, invocation given by Councilmember Lance Megacy, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance to the American and Texas flags.
Please rise.
Please bow your heads. Heavenly Father, we give you praise for the day. We thank you for your goodness and your faithfulness to us. Father, we just ask that you would bless each and every person in this city council chambers, that you would give us wisdom to make the right decisions to move our city forward. We ask that you put your hand of protection over our DPS and fire officers, and that you would watch over them as they do the dangerous work protecting our city. Father, we just ask that you would bless each and every single person. We give you praise for it. In the name of your Son, Jesus, we ask. Amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Oh, boy. Next, please.
Next is item 3, public comment, and I've received no request to address the council.
Okay, next, please.
Item 4, strategic planning workshop. Those A will be introductions and plan of work. B, good governance and effective policymaking. C, current strategic plan report. D, individual perspectives and group priorities. And E, workshop recap and preview of work plan for second strategic workshop.
Okay, it's all been announced, so welcome. Thank you for coming tonight.
We have our facilitator from SGR, Hillary Shine. Some of you remember Hillary from a few years ago, and I think we had a great process that year, and so we wanted to change it up. We always like to change it up a little bit and do something a little bit different. So Hillary is back, and we're glad to have her. So yes, take us through.
Thank you, and thank all of you for your work ahead of this workshop. I'm trying to maximize our time together and be as effective and efficient as possible. So I come to you, having spoken to each of you individually about your personal perspectives, but you work in the cumulative, right? You work as a body, as a council, and so we want to focus on those areas where there are particular differences and see if we can come to some commonalities for the long-term future of FATE as a community. Tonight, what we'll do is go over kind of the principles of good governance. I know some of you have been through this before when I got to visit with you a couple times ago, but I really want to do a refresher for those folks, and then also for any of you folks, if you have questions, thoughts, concerns, let's talk through them as a body so we make sure that we're all understanding what good governance looks like for FATE in particular, so we can be as effective as possible. And then I'm going to take you through, Michael will take you through some of the accomplishments since last we met a couple of years ago. FATE's on the move. I can tell that just by driving through the city today. And so we want to look at where we have come, compare that to where we thought we were going to be, and that will set us up for next time together where we decide where we want to go over the next couple or more years. And then we will talk about your SWOT analysis, your focus areas, and see if we can come to sort of our strategic areas, the things that are of most importance to FATE. So that sets us up for next week to really start to try to drill down next month. Thank you. Not next week. Woo! That would be a lot for y'all. So that next month when we come back together, we can really put pen to paper and come up with some of those specific objectives on where we want to head over the next few years. So I'm Hillary Shine, for any of you who I have not met yet. I spent 20 years in city government and retired and am now doing this work and have been doing this for about 4 years. And so it's my pleasure to come to cities that really want to do it right. They really want to focus on what the future of their community looks like rather than just sort of muddling through whatever today is. And then also those that really want to be a part of the change in the governance culture, really trying to be one of those positive forces in the community so we can rally the community around our city government, build that trust, and ultimately succeed together long term. So I start with this because I think it's interesting when we talk about government. You all are government, right? So you're local government, you're the closest to the people. But you're fighting an uphill battle because of what national and statewide government feels like today. And so this comes from the Pew Research Center, and I just think it's always good to gain perspective on what Americans think of the current state of politics. These are the words that they use to describe it. That is not who we want to be. Can we all agree to that as we move forward, right? We don't want to allow that or bring that into our environment, because what that does when you look at it is it says, not only does it cause maybe more friction or more chaos than there needs to be, but it slows down our effectiveness and our ability to serve the public that expects and deserves our services. So I think it's interesting that I don't see a positive word up there. Does anyone see one? No. And so what we want to do is figure out how we maintain a system that sort of eliminates those perceptions and really tries to build on the positives so that our residents, when we ask something of them, have an understanding and an ability to either speak their opinion or to get behind our efforts. This is another one, and I showed this. They just completed this study. They do it every 4 years, and so I don't have the newest one for you, but I think it's a really interesting just sort of point-in-time look. But it's showing you federal is the first column, state is the second column, and local is the third column. And if you see the federal column, the perception of unfavorable opinion of government at the federal level is 66% unfavorable, 32% favorable. You move to the state level, and it's a slightly more even break and gets slightly more favorable. Local, it's the exact opposite of the federal government. And why is that? It's because your government is closest to the people, right? People see you. They can actually come to City Hall and ask you for something or present their opinion. And so I put this up there to show it's, you've got these two other massive government entities, and right now we're in a session in the state of Texas, so it makes it even more caustic than it typically, might be. But what we want to do is we want to keep that divide. We want to stay in the positive with our residents. We want to stay in the more favorable perspective or opinion of the services we provide. Potholes aren't red or blue. Potholes are potholes. And people expect a pothole to get fixed. And so if we can take some of the divisiveness out, if we can take some of the, sort of party politics and those sorts of things and really focus on the services that we provide and those things that we offer our residents and show the value of that service to those that we serve, the chances of us keeping that more positive perception are greater. But it comes down to you all as representatives of the government. Staff has to be effective. There's no question about that. But you all have to be part of this and explain to people when the decision isn't what they wanted it to be. Explain to them how they can participate, but also represent those opinions that may be overshadowed by louder voices. So it's to us to stay engaged and to keep that bridge built to those that we serve. So how do we do that? First, I asked each of you what you thought of the council's dynamics currently as a team. How is council functioning or not functioning as a team? Because I think it's really important for us to have a good understanding of what we feel are friction points so we can look at what might be improved. It went everywhere from functional to we don't feel like we're a team, that maybe there's factions building or that there are some that exist. It feels that there might be some special interests or personal agendas coming to the table rather than the greater good, which is where a governing body is supposed to focus. That some of it's personality driven, that's in every single unit of a team whatsoever, right? But how do we get past the, I don't like you as a person and I respect you as the position that you hold and that you were elected, as an official. That there may be some resistance to changing our path, to changing what we've been doing that's been potentially working or not working. But is there a change afoot? Is there a different voice or different voices that maybe want to be heard at this point because fate continues to grow and change? And that there's sort of an anti-government versus pro-government, and where do we find the balance? Government's not always right. I'm not standing here telling you that by any stretch of the imagination, but it's also not always wrong. And so if our perspective is we're coming in to burn it down, that lasts for about that long. And then what do? Now you're left with building from scratch. And so what we want to do is try to figure out how to bring those opinions, those differences, but come from a perspective of we're still trying to build it up. It may look different than what you all thought it was 5 years ago, but we're still trying to build it up as a community. So good governance, just in general, these are just general principles of good governance. They should consider all stakeholders. Shouldn't be the one person down the street, shouldn't be the two people in that neighborhood. It should really be the decisions that you make have to focus on the whole, the entirety, because your vote counts for every single person in this community. It should create community engagement. It should be open. People should know where they can plug in. They should know where their voice can be heard. They should know how the processes work so that they know where to engage themselves. But it should also be outward. We should be actively trying to engage the people that we serve. We shouldn't just be waiting for them to come to us, right? Good governance sets the organization's priorities and goals. That's what we're going to focus on toward the end of this meeting. Also at the next meeting, we're really looking longer term, longer down the road. Where is it that we're trying to go so that staff can start building the steps to get us there? It should ensure the financial health of the organization. That does not mean counting every single penny in the budget. You've got a way bigger problem in the system if we feel a need to do the city managers or the finance directors or the whoever's job. I had a council person many moons ago who we were going through the budget process, and he wanted, do y'all remember green bars? You're too young, probably. You know the green bars, like this thing. Okay, our budget was $250 million, and he wanted green bars. He wanted every single line item because he was gonna go through them one by one. And that year he decided that office supplies had gone up. He hadn't considered that the staffing had gone up across the organization. But he looked at, there's a 10% increase across the board of office supplies, and he got really interested in that and fixated on it. So we're at one of the budget hearings, public's there, staff's there, and he calls the police chief up to the podium. And he says, Chief, I see your line item for office supplies went up 10% this year, just like everybody else's did. Well, so did his staff, but that's beside the point at this point. And he goes, how much of that was paper clips? That was a gotcha. That was not in order to understand or to best manage a budget. That was a gotcha to see how every single paperclip was being accounted for. But at the end of the day, what did it serve? What purpose did it serve? It embarrassed the police chief because he didn't know how many paperclips, right? I mean, like that was even beneath what he needed to do. But to me, that's indicative of a problem with the system. There's a lack of trust in the people who are managing the finances or who are managing the department that has to be addressed. It's not about counting every single bean that's in the pot. But it is your responsibility to make sure the systems are in place. So if that is, adopting the budget, if that is approving the financial expenditures, if that is the annual audits, the external audits, those sorts of systems need to be in place so that you can trust that the figures that you're getting are accurate and correct and complete. That's the other part that's very important. It sets expectations for efficient and effective management systems. So if you think that the city manager should be over this service area or not over this service area, that is a council level decision. You can determine what you believe is necessary for the effective management of systems. It is not to tell the city manager that he needs to put 3 more people in that particular area on that particular day of the week. That's why you have a city manager, and that's what the charter dictates, is that is his job, and it is your job to make sure that the system as a whole is operating and meeting the expectations that you all have set. It should enable the delivery of quality projects and services, similar to what we were just talking about, access to those quality services. So you all, being representatives of the whole, have to make sure that there's not a particular area that's being left out of a service or is being served in a lesser manner than others are. You need to make sure that there is access to all of the things that you're providing in an equitable way across the community, so that you don't have pockets in a north-south divide or this part versus that part, because ultimately you're trying to serve everyone or the greater good. It is to hold the organization accountable for its promises. So part of that is you making promises. And that's part of the strategic planning process. It's saying this is what we as a body agree is the correct direction for the city, and we're going to give the guidance to the city manager and staff to start building plans toward that. And if those plans don't come to fruition, or if they don't hold up their end of the bargain, or if you all change course, you're holding yourselves accountable as well. But if it's not written down and it's just talked about, then how is the public to understand specifically what it is that we're trying to track? When it's not written down, it can be changed too easily. Good governance helps. It's building those systems and processes so it eliminates the ambiguity. It's very easy for us to attack the processes if they're opaque, if people don't understand, then we say, oh, well, you know, that closed door meeting, or they called so-and-so, oh, they're dealing under the table. We're trying to do things in the light of day. We're trying to make processes that people understand their part in, and that make sure that we are honoring the expectations that people hold of us so that they can trust our operations and our decision-making. We want to set those standards and expectations. So where I said the city manager isn't to, you're not to tell him, put 3 people over here on this day of the week, right? But it's to say we expect this level of service at all times. And he figures out with his executives or his professional staff what that looks like on a day-to-day, on a day-to-day standard. But you all have said we expect this level of service at all times or at certain times, right? And so part of that is the discussion that we will have later. It focuses on those common issues and not personal interests. Every single one of you, I promise, has been singled out, come up to, called, cornered in the grocery store about one individual's personal issue, right? Something that they're particularly interested in. May be of good service to them, but may not be part of the whole. It may not be part of what the correct solution is. It may be a symptom, and it is to you to understand if that symptom is broader than just the one person, or to help them obtain the service that they are trying to get. But it is not to you to take that person out in isolation and fix this one thing without regard for everybody else and what their needs are. It's also, we're speeding the process and reducing time spent inefficiently. So if we've got good processes, if we deliberate well in this room, if we have good standards, the way that we make decisions, how meetings are held, how they're managed, all of those sorts of things, it helps us get to the ultimate answer, or the ultimate end more quickly, where we're not sort of, fuddling around trying to figure out, well, what are we doing here, or how do we do this, or why did we go this direction? And think, if you all are confused in that circumstance, how does that make the public feel? They don't understand, especially if the system or the processes are not as effective or efficient as they should. Ultimately, what we're trying to do is make better decisions. And so it is to you to set the standard that says we need more consideration of this. We need more understanding of this. We need more research on this because I'm not comfortable. Doesn't mean that you're supposed to stop everything from moving because you are on a moving train. But ultimately, we want you to be able to stand behind and defend your decisions, good or bad. When they succeed and when they fail, at least we can point to the system and say that it was done in good faith. I don't agree with the outcome necessarily, but we did it effectively and we did it by the rules, and you win some, you lose some, right? Defending the process even when your position isn't victorious. And ultimately, we're trying to move the community in the future. So all of our decision making should be of what does it look like years from now, rather than right here, right now, and putting out this one little fire and doing this one little thing. Those have implications long term. And so we have to really be trying to keep our eye on the horizon and make sure we're still cruising in the right direction, even if we do have to manage something in the shorter term. So good governance leaders, you all, are external communicators. That's taking the issues that you're dealing with to the public that you serve, and not just those who agree with you. We really want to be building those bridges because those who agree with you today may not tomorrow. And so we want to be communicating with others, and we also want to be hearing those counter opinions. We don't want to be in this sort of vacuum where we're just hearing the same thing over and over again because we may miss something. But even the critics, there is some little something in there that might be useful to the deliberation and might help you make a better decision. And so you should be taking what you do here and what you hear here, with some exceptions under the law, but you should be taking it back to the public that you serve. You should be explaining to them why a decision was made the way that it was made, even if you, or if they have a problem and they want a different, solution, explaining to them that's state law, and so you can call, you know what I mean? Like trying to be that bridge, trying to provide the information to them so they can be more effective. But you also have to bring it back in. So you should be internal communicators. Staff should not be caught off guard when, so-and-so down the street's been complaining about this one thing to you. I'm pointing at you just because you have bright red hair. I just figured they'd see you coming. But bringing it in so that staff can help the person, or so that the council understands that there's a differing perspective, or inviting that person into the discourse in the appropriate time, so that you're not just keeping your little pieces of information over here and then springing them when you find it most effective. That's not good governance. Good governance is trying to put it all on the table so everyone can deliberate it and come to the decision regardless of which way it goes. Fiduciary overseers, we talked about that. Systems in place that make sure that the wheels are turning and that the lights stay on. We don't want these government shutdown kind of scenarios happening here. Your services are too vital day to day for that ever to happen. But we want to make sure that we trust those budget items. We want to make sure we trust the way that the money is being spent. And then we're asking really good questions and looking at the reports and the audits and doing all of the right things to make sure that we don't have anything that is out of order or out of sync. Policy developers, y'all are here. Y'all have a tremendous amount of power to set policy and direction. Strategic plan is a policy document. It is saying this is where we as a body agree that we want to go over the next whatever period of time. The budget is a policy document. Ordinances, policies. Those are the highest level orders that you all have the ability to set, and it's so important that that's where you focus your efforts because those are the broader things. Those are the things that last the test of time. We could fix the pothole today, but you all should be trying to figure out how to make roads that never have potholes, right? It's a different perspective where we should just always be trying to look at that next. It doesn't mean it all falls apart. That's not the expectation. The expectation is that we're still trying to figure out what the better solution is moving forward so we don't keep going through the same motions every single day. Information system overseers, making sure the information gets out there, making sure that when you're doing your meetings that they're made available to the public. If there are particular things that affect particular parts of the city, trying to advise or give guidance to those areas that say this is going to affect you, and so here's the information or here's the meeting that you can come to, but really trying to make sure that we're open and transparent and communicative with those that we serve. Setting those priorities and ultimately being those strategic visionaries. Strategic meaning moving forward. We can sit here all we want for some period of time, but here slips away day by day by day. We always are trying to push it forward. We're trying to make the next step forward so that we can continue being successful regardless of what the current circumstances, but we have to be reasonable about what it is we're trying to achieve long-term and moving forward. But it requires us focusing on the future, understanding our roles. That division of the day-to-day belongs with Michael and his team. And if you have a problem with the day-to-day and how it's going, those are discussions that you can have, but you are a body. So if it is an expectation of service level, if it's an expectation of service delivery, those are things that you all as a body need to say, this is our standard. If we've never set the standard or the expectation, then we're shooting in the dark, right? We're gonna try to do the best that we can as staff. But if you have something that is of particular importance or particular need, those are policy decisions that say this is what we expect. And we should be having those discussions and not just, every once in a while when every 2 years with a strategic plan. It's important to have them then, it's important to have them with the budget, but it's an ongoing conversation that we should be having. Respecting each other, every one of you was elected, and every one of you, holds the same power and the same responsibility, with the exception of the mayor having a little bit more of that. Managing the meetings and that sort of stuff. But there's also, the idea that if you believe that the election was run fairly, everybody up there is supposed to be up there. And everyone up there has a valid opinion, even when it's different than yours. So we respect each other. We respect that you have earned your position. We may not like each other. We may not like your opinion on that, but we have to be respectful because each of you, holds the same level of power. Adopting and upholding policies and processes. So that is, when there is a policy or process, we need to make sure that that is effective, that it is serving the purposes that we expect, and that we are adopting them regularly and updating them, not just set it and forget it, because sometimes things change, but we want to have a regular cadence of making sure we're still meeting the mark, and it still works for us. There's some new faces since I was even here last time, and so we as a group have to determine what works best for us. So that we can have thoughtful deliberation, so that we have the time and the bandwidth and the ability to have the discussions even when they're tough, so that we can come to the right decisions. And ultimately we're leaning towards teamwork. You are a team. You're always going to be a team. And so figuring out how to work best as a team is going to be the best solution moving forward. Again, not saying everyone agrees, that everyone always raises their right hand and says the same thing. But as a team, we have to figure out what's the greater good and how can we all start to move that direction together. And trust in each other, trust that you all each belong there, trust in your staff, trust in the services that you provide, trust in the procedures and policies that you set, because ultimately it's that public that then has to trust that system and has to trust you and has to trust that staff. And we don't ever want to go back to the bubbles and become one of those types of governments where there is no trust and there's just constant criticism and consternation and doubt related to us and the services that we provide. So principles, basing your decisions on the next generation and not the next election, really trying to maintain that focus on what's the good long-term view and long-term vision, focusing on the mission, vision, and values when making decisions, greater good for the entire community, governing rather than managing. You have a manager who manages. So really trying to take the time to deliberate and think thoughtfully about those policy decisions. And again, if you have the same problem over and over and over and over again, and yeah, staff is handling it, that's great. But is there some other issue we should be looking at that's causing that problem over and over and over? Is there something different that we could do moving forward so we're not in the same situation over and over? Protecting the integrity of the process over the rightness of my position. So being upfront, trying to be open, trying to be fair and courteous, being a role model for civility. Yes, we're divided on opinions. Yes, we're divided on issues, but that doesn't mean that we don't have an obligation to our public and the public that we serve to try to do it with civility. And never forgetting it's not about me, it's not about now, and it never is. It is, you're in a 100+ year business. And so we are looking very, very long term, and if all we're ever doing is the short fixes, then we're missing the long-term opportunities. So just a few strategies. Know what you don't know. Ask those questions. Be more curious than critical. Being genuinely humble, knowing that you don't know all that you know, or that you think you know. You've got staff that are professionals, people that have been doing this for their entire careers, and where absolutely opinions are valid and perspectives are valid, their expertise is also valuable. And so really trying to recognize that all of us can learn over time. I can tell you in my 20 years, I was still learning things at the end. I mean, I started with September 11th, and I ended with Snowvid. So and COVID, everything in between you could possibly imagine. And so there's always something to learn and always something changing and evolving and different. And so always being that sponge and trying to absorb and figure out, piece it together and figure out all the new and different things. Knowing yourself, knowing if you are, not checked in, knowing if you get frustrated, knowing if your face turns red, but also knowing what you stand for and not being afraid to say, you know what, I'm never going to change my mind on this. And so we can deliberate this all day, every day, but this is who I am and this is where I stand. And so let's figure out how to keep moving forward, right? But just knowing yourself and what your non-negotiables are. Listening more and talking less. I know that as soon as you got elected, you had all the answers and you're expected to tell everybody this is how it all works, right? But there's a lot to be gained from listening, and not just to each other, but to staff who's been doing it or does it every day, and then also the public that you serve, including those critics. Asking good questions. Questions for the sake of the floor, or questions just for the sake of questions. How many paper clips? Probably not the greatest question. There was a better question to be asked. Why did everything go up 10% this year? I don't know. Well, it's because your staffing went up. Oh, okay, that makes sense, right? It's not just because we felt like putting 10% more in the budget. But really trying to understand the issue so that you can ask those good questions and sort of sift through the things that are just noise. Knowing and honoring those structures and processes. Dynamics influencing issues, very important. You're not in a vacuum, but some of the people, some of the special interests that may come to your door or into your inbox They may not know all the dynamics, and it's to you to help educate them about, yes, that's great, but you're not considering all of these other things. I'll still take this forward for you. We'll still talk about it, but you need to understand there's all this other stuff that's part of that. Developing your position thoughtfully, so really taking the time, and if you feel like you're being pressured, if you feel like you don't have enough information, going and trying to get some more from the city manager, or asking for a bit more time to consider something, or asking for someone else's opinion that may be different than those that you've heard so far. Developing your position with integrity, so not doing those things that are illegal along the way, right? None of those walking quorums and all the things that I know none of you have ever done. But really trying to be upfront, do it in the light of day, do the right things, bring all of the information to the table, not play the gotcha game, but really trying to act with integrity. Communicating your goals and priorities clearly. So again, you're part of a team, but that doesn't mean you're not an individual and you don't have opinions and thoughts. And so really trying to articulate those in a way that is effective. And the rest of the group may this time say, disagree. And that's part of the process. But the next group that comes on board may not feel the same. So, you're in this kind of moving, machine. And so making sure that you're being clear and enumerating and vocalizing your goals where appropriate. Losing gracefully and winning gracefully. I worked with a council in the north of Fort Worth, bigger city. And I probably just gave it away. But very divided council, 4-3. And the fours said, we have 4 votes. So they would just shut it down left and right. We have 4 votes. Well, guess what? Someday you're going to have 3. Because that's just the nature of the beast. There will be turnover, right? So just because you have 4 votes and you can shut down the discourse, just because you have 4 votes and you can shut down the deliberation, and because you can get your way, doesn't make it the right thing. And so really, when you are deliberating and working through issues, particularly those that are controversial in some way, not just losing gracefully when you're on the short end of the stick, but also winning gracefully, giving the people that you respect because they are elected as you are the same opportunity, not using your power of 4 to shut down the discourse and to not let other people have their voice heard. And ultimately, you're just trying to build trust constantly. Trust in the system, trust in each other, trust with your staff. And ultimately, if there is no trust in the system and the services that you provide, you're lost. You're lost. You're lost for who wants to run for council. You're lost for who wants to work for the city. You're lost for the people who expect the services of you and think that they're getting the short end of the stick every single time. When you ask them for something, they're going to be the first ones to say no, even if you really do need it. Trust is everything. And again, when you looked at that graph in the beginning, the cities have the advantage right now because you do have the connection. You have more contact with these folks. And so whatever you can do to not be the person who's constantly, kind of eroding that trust, but rather trying to build it and trying to explain and trying to be that conduit to the community and inviting the discourse and inviting the conversation and explaining to them why things are the way that they are or why they're not, and trying to understand the system so you can better explain it to them is so important. My community went through a recall election that kicked all 6 council members out of office 7 council members, I'm sorry, 7, and a mayor. The mayor stayed, but 7 members were out for 6 months. Gone. No government for 6 months. Tried to be effective with the residents' needs and services. It was very difficult, and it's because we'd lost trust. We had lost trust in the system because people were not acting in a way that was. And so what that led to is they're still in a downward spiral. Nobody wants to run. Nobody wants to be part of the fighting and the infighting. Nobody wants to work there. And so a cautionary tale is we want to be the opposite of that. We really want to be the trust builders and the people who are bringing the community together rather than tearing it apart. All right, and so this is the last slide in my part, and then Michael's going to take you through some accomplishments before we come back to your personal perspectives. But this is, I kept telling you, kind of you're in a machine. It's moving, it's constantly moving. And this is a graphic that we like to use because governance really is a system. It's not just set it and forget it and it's done. You have something like the charter that came into play as soon as the city was incorporated, but that even gets reviewed here and there, right, to see what's still working and what's not. So every system is that way. It doesn't mean that you have to constantly disrupt the system, but it means that we should be envisioning that there's a constant cycle or a constant process and a continuous improvement of the system because things change over time. So most issues will come to you with this sort of top part where citizen input to council, whether it's you as the citizen representative or citizen or whomever might bring something to council and say, this is an issue that we think you should look at, we need some resolution to this. Or staff will say, hey, state law changed, we have to do this thing differently, or we can't or we need a new, whatever piece of equipment. There could be an issue like that they bring to you. And then council, it's your responsibility to envision what the right solution is. So if they bring to you, we can lease these pieces of equipment or we can buy these pieces of equipment, you all are envisioning what the best long-term solution is. They're going to give you all the facts and all the information, right? Can we afford it? Is this a service we still want to provide? But you all have the ability through any number of processes to set your vision. So whether it's setting an ordinance, whether it's approving an agenda item, whether it is approving a budget, whether it's setting a strategic plan, you all are trying to say, this is what's in the best interest for the long term. Once you all say this is what we think is the right decision or the right solution, staff can then go about planning. They can say, okay, so if we're going to go this direction, then we need to consider A, B, C, D, and E so that we can make sure that we can meet whatever that expectation is. Staff brings that back to you. Council, you have the right to affirm it and say, yes, that meets our expectations, or no, it doesn't. So think about the budget process, for instance. Staff brings forward, here's this information. Affirmation is when it comes back to you for a vote. The same thing with an ordinance, other agenda item that you all would approve. Once you affirm it by raising your hand, voting for whatever that is, then staff now has the go-ahead to go do it. Whether it's a financial instrument, so now you can go spend the money, or you could go hire the people, or whatever that is, staff can execute it. But then it's back to you to decide whether or not that meets the expectations. So council evaluates. Is this achieving what we said we wanted to do? Is it a system problem? Is it a resource problem? Is it better than we ever thought it would be, and we want to move faster than we even expected? I don't know, but it's to you to decide what that standard is, what it is you're trying to achieve, and if we're meeting the mark or not. Because if not, then staff needs to adjust. So when you say, yeah, but this isn't doing, it could be a process issue. It could be that the information that was put out to the public was confusing. It could be that people don't know that this thing exists. But it's to you to say, hey, staff, we thought it was going to do this. It didn't. Have that conversation and then say, okay, we want you to adjust it in this way. And just continue around this cycle or this circle. Again, not set it and forget it. We have to be agile, we have to be moving, but what we can't do is start moving things over here because people have a dependence or an expectation of this sort of cycle. There's a reason that budgets happen once a year the way that they do. There's a reason that strategic plans happen every couple of years like they do. Why you can only have a charter election every so often. Is it every 2 years? 5? Okay. I was rusty on that one. Or whatever sort of a bond election or whatever. There are certain parameters that you have to subscribe to, and it's not because it is just one and done. It's because we're looking at the whole. We're looking at the cycle, and we have to be part of this cycle. An election cycle is another part of this. So again, just graphically to show you that it's not just we make a decision and we move on about it again. No, it's something that we should be having an ongoing conversation about. Doesn't mean we're going through retrying every single thing all the time and stops and starts, but it does show you that you all have the ability and the expectation, looking at the systems and making sure that they're meeting their expectations all along the way. All right, so now I'm going to turn it over to Michael, and Michael are you doing it?
Yes, unless you want to talk about, maybe do you want to give a chance to talk about the...
Sure.
the governance pieces. Anybody have
Any questions?
thoughts on that or comments or?
Nope. I don't see any. All right, we're good?
Okay.
Good? We can go forward.
All right.
Do you have a PowerPoint?
I do. I do.
You got one?
All right. I think it's in the folder. How do I get to that folder? Sorry. Oh, there it is. All right. Podium. All right. Am I in the right place? Oops.
Now we know the secret code. Podium presentation, non-podium presentation.
Here we go. I think there's something about the younger you are, the faster you can go through technology. And I used to be fast. It's depressing. Okay. This is a quick review of the City Council strategic priorities from last year. I'll just take you through some of these. And of course, feel free to ask questions or make comments, whatever, or we can do it at the end. So however we wish to do that. And my clicker is not working. Here we go. Okay, we're back. So we had several things going on last year. We talked about public safety, fiscal resiliency and accountability, a sense of community, recreation, sustainable infrastructure, with a big emphasis on stabilization of the workforce and a resilient business environment. So public safety, we had a few goals to hit for public safety. The fire division recruitment has gone well. Those jobs are filled and that hiring is complete. As far as DPS, we're a little bit slower. So we've got 3 positions open for public safety officers, particularly police. We do have 1 new position authorized. It hasn't started yet. The budget allows it to start April 1st. That's a detective, narcotics kind of focused, but also could be regular detective. And then we have a code enforcement officer unrelated to public safety. We have a code enforcement officer that's slotted to begin. That's advertising. We'll talk about that in a second. So a little bit slower on police, but we're not quite there yet. We're getting there. We do have I think we had some launching this weekend. Some people were interacting with Chief over the weekend, and it's kind of like we were talking today. We'll start it, and then we'll get a bunch of folks in, and sometimes they'll work out, or they won't, and then we'll kind of put a freeze to it, reopen it. That seems to be effective. Get another pulse of applicants. Success. Let's see other things. Emergency response. So we've been also we talked about the hiring of firefighters. That's been going well. The emergency management program. Of course, we have more and more staff that have experience as we've grabbed people from other places. But we're continuing with disaster deployment, working with the county. Traffic calming. This is something that you all listed, which I love. Traffic calming, as you know. The signage, we spent most of our traffic calming budget already on the downtown signage of the 25 miles an hour in downtown. Those signs are pretty well, I think they're all up, right, Scott? Yes. Yep. So we've got all those signs up. Of course, monitoring, DPS is out there looking at things. Hopefully that's improving the traffic flow. We're also looking at doing some stuff in downtown. We had some complaints right near the park there where we've got some things. So we're working with Matt and Scott and folks. We're working with some folks there. And then we're also looking at maybe some dressing up downtown. So we got all that stuff. We're about 70% of the way through our traffic calming budget, and we didn't put much money in there, but we're working on traffic calming, so that continues. And then of course social media. You've seen some of that activity. We've also done some enforcement targeting and so forth. We've got last year you gave us funds to put in the traffic units, so we've got the 2 unmarked traffic units, which I love. They're very effective. So we've been deploying them to different places to hit that traffic issue. Fiscal resiliency and accountability. So the tax rate, I think we did we continued with our focus on the de minimis rate. Y'all approved the de minimis rate. Not sure if the state is going to allow us to have the de minimis rate anymore, but we'll see. We'll see. We reduced the tax rate by ½ cent in overall M&O, and then the road fee. We eliminated the road fee. That was a big outcry. We heard that. Put it in last year. Used it to do some different things, and then this year we took it out. So far we're doing good without the road fee. How that's going to work long term, not sure. Depends on what happens with the rest of our revenue sources. Effective revenue management, so we've been diversifying. Passport, we've taken on that task. We're about 20% through our revenue expectations, so it's a little bit slow, but it seems to come in waves. So we get a bunch of folks come in for passports, and then it kind of dies down, and we get a bunch more in. So we're still watching to see how that goes. I think it's doing okay, pretty well. People enjoy the service, that's for sure. And then, of course, I know we added staffing there, but the building department's been a little bit ahead of schedule as far as the activity level. We've got a ton of commercial going on, which is great, but we've also got a lot of residential, so we've been able to plug that staff member in to absorb that surge in building development. Sales tax growth, the budget. So last year we had a lot of stuff. Of course, the prior year we had a lot of things opening. So overall, if you look at our budget, the budget number increased by 38%. We're almost hitting that target. But if you look at, actually, this is an interesting statistic. Year to date, fiscal year to date last year, 1.17 million for the first 4 months of the year, and then this one, 1.23. This is an indicator that I wanted to kind of flag, that this is a slowing of the increase in the rate of the sales tax growth. So we're only about 3%, almost 4% ahead of last year, where we were fiscal year. So you start October 1, and you conclude January 31. So for that period, from last year to this year, we're only about 3.6% increased. So that's something we should kind of think about as far as we go forward, what's happening. New commercial, lots of new commercial. Fate Place, The Park, AutoZone, Children's Lighthouse, Salad and Go, Starward Cafe, many others. And then we wanted to kind of highlight these folks a little separately, because even though our sales tax is kind of slow, we do have a couple new fun places that just opened. They're not actually in those sales tax numbers. They won't show up in those sales tax numbers for a couple more months because there's a lag. They pay the state, and then the state holds on to it, uses our money for free, takes a huge cut of it, and then sends us the rest. I almost say huge cut. They have an administrative fee they charge us. And then so we get it. It takes about 2 months for us to get that. So Fate Village Tavern on the south side, and then Red Dirt Social in downtown, 2 great little places. Those will be coming in. We should see that in a couple months. Fiscal resiliency and accountability, kind of continuing on that. The more commercial development, VW, Sauce and Vine, Richland Plaza, Alamo Fireworks, Infinity Marine, Stag's Car Wash, and then coming in, breaking ground in 25 and probably being completed in 26 and coming online 7-Eleven. Slurpee fans, you're out there. Go buy lots of Slurpees, we get sales tax. Whataburger, Chipotle, Pizza Hut, Scrubby's Car Wash, Panda Express, AutoZone is getting bigger. They're getting this like regional, they're basically adding on to the back and having this regional kind of parts, all sorts of cool stuff. The Montessori schools, we think those will both be in, and various little retail centers. We're seeing little strip centers that are in the various planning documents that have been there for quite some time. Those are all building. Responsible debt management. Of course, we're having the bond sale. We're in the midst of the bond sale for the police department and fire department remodels. We got a AA stable rating reaffirmed. We talked about that at the last city council meeting. And of course, we're managing a 120-day reserve, and those are invested in Tex Pool, which is a local government investment pool that meets the requirements of the Public Funds Investment Act. And then agency notes and treasury notes are a lot of our investments as well. And then the kind of a fun stat is a staff to population ratio. So we're about 3.4 per 1,000 residents, down from 3.7 in fiscal year 23. And I think in fiscal year 22 we were similar, but so we've got a fairly low employee population. Part of that is some of our things that we do are contracted, where other cities, they do it this themselves. So water treatment, wastewater treatment. North Texas does all that for us, sends us clean water, and we send them dirty water, they clean it for us. Sanitation, so we have a contract for trash removal and recycling, so that's contracted, so that doesn't count to our employee counts. And then we have a limited number of services. We have public safety, combined police, fire, huge amount of personnel savings. And so all those things help push our recreational, so we'll talk about recreation. We don't have a lot of programming, but we do focus on parks. So parks are a little bit cheaper than programs to run, so we do have programs, but primarily we focus on parks and trails. So all those things result in a fairly low employee count. Plus we have our HOAs. Our HOAs do a ton of city-related things. They're responsible for a lot of the drainage. They have entertainment kind of people. They have people that essentially do code work and tell you to put your garbage can back and fine you if your flower beds are wrong and all that kind of stuff. So we have the HOAs almost acting like a layer of local control, which helps drive our costs down. But of course, we pay HOA dues. Sense of community. We have a new newsletter. I think that we have I think the open rate's been really good on that. Does anybody know the open rate on the email? It's been great. Sorry, I didn't.
I can get that.
Okay, I didn't mean to gotcha you. But I think it's high. I mean, generally they're fairly high. I think we were talking about the open rates for some of these are generally pretty high. So people are reading this, and it's great information. I hope you all like it. Of course, we're continually looking at ways to engage the community, especially our 30-somethings. Those are kind of our key market where we see just we want to see a lot more activity because they're out there, and even our younger 40-somethings. And then, of course, continuing those, utilizing the community survey. We've got the community survey in place. We tweaked the timing of the survey, so it's a little bit more useful. And we are planning a new business satisfaction survey to come up. We haven't put that in the budget this year, but I think it's coming. And then we have some stats on social media growth. Not all of our activities are social media, but we do like to use social media. And the crazy content, people love the crazy content. They love it. Maybe I shouldn't call it crazy content. They love the creative content. So they love it. So YouTube, of course, we have the YouTube system now. So we've converted from having, the system that we had. We've got a lot of different views now. We've got almost 2,700 views on the meeting streams, which is a lot. I don't think we ever came close to that using the old system. More community efforts. We implemented, Stephen's been great about working with the different departments on different on messaging and customer service type improvements. So we've got some things like we've got the texting service that integrates with Facebook and Instagram. So so now you can text us. You don't have to call us. You can just, if you don't feel like talking to somebody, like a lot of our younger folks want to text us, that goes into a system and it's distributed based on to the different departments. We can even have an AI type answering some of that stuff, which we'll turn on when we're ready. But right now we're sending it to different people. And we've already got about 500 since we implemented it just a little while ago. We've already got about 500 inquiries of different things via the text messages. We were using Zen City, which is kind of a cool software program, but we've discontinued that just as we think it's more cost effective. Had some feedback from some of y'all during the budget process about that, so we've not used that one. But we've used other engagement processes and alternatives. You'll see us trying different things all the time. Recreation, we're continuing our partnership with the Y. You'll notice that Celebrate Fate and Christmas were boosted this year, and we kind of reorganized some of the ways we did that, and Steve's team really took the lead and did a lot of work on that. Every department helps with Celebrate Fate, of course, and Christmas. Our residents love those events, so we did do that. We did not increase the Parks and Rec staffing, but we're able to do that. And then you all decided in the budget process you wanted a code enforcement officer, so we're talking about that earlier. We're now in the process of hiring that person. Planned park improvements that are coming, because we're kind of halfway through a lot of the goals for the year. So some of the stuff's been accomplished, but we still have 6 more months to kind of get it done. There's a sports field planned for Joe Berger Park, a full-size sports field, and a sports field for Robert Smith. And we're going through the bidding process for all that, for all those right now. Those are park fee projects, and I think some of it's leftover bond funds. So the Joe Berger is leftover bond funds. And then, Steve, I believe the other one's park fee money. That's part of the, and the Parks Board's been great. We've been working with the Parks Board on all these different projects. All right, one of our big things was sustainable infrastructure and services, which we love this goal. So park enhancements, we just talked about that. Some more sports fields. Roads maintenance, we eliminated the road fee. We'll see what it takes to, we'll see what it kind of takes to run the road system. We do have, this year, we're very excited, we have access, so we have the asset management software. So Scott's team has a program called Cartograph. OpenGov recently acquired Cartograph, so a lot of the stuff now talks to each other. And there's a module we got that, that we're able to look at what our needs are based on, so you take the roadbotics data on the quality of the road system, you get the asset inventory of all the roads, and it'll, we're still playing with it, but we hope to, at the time of the budget, be able to tell you all how much money should we be spending on the road maintenance system, because that's kind of been a question. We've got some different national standards and benchmarks, but it's hard to kind of make that work for us. Well, a lot of our road system is brand new, which is great, because we don't have to put a lot of maintenance into it, but at some point, based on how new our roadway system is, where we are, we'll need to know, like, what is that number? So you all were good about that. We put another $500,000 in the budget this year to do more road maintenance, and Scott is using that very effectively. But the question is, what is that number? And we should be able to tell you what that number is. So that'll be exciting. If you're into road maintenance, it's very exciting. I love it. But also scary because roads are expensive. Cybersecurity, lots of efforts this year on cybersecurity. In fact, we had a meeting today talking about cybersecurity activity. It was great. We're implementing a lot of the recommendations and that Michael made and that you all funded in the budget this year. So different things are coming online, different systems to boost our defenses. So they're part of the planning, part of our asset management. Lots of cybersecurity measures that we've turned on. We don't want to go into detail about what those are, because those are we don't want to talk about with the bad guys maybe watching what kind of systems we use. But also we've integrated a lot of that with disaster recovery. In emergency management, we've got things that we're going to be doing this year to possibly do some scenario planning and have some fun with that, and then prepare our protocols and kind of get to the next level. Imagine that you get hit. What do you do? Do you go through this, through that, through that? So we're working on a lot of those still. Okay, customer service, more talk about customer service. So we've got, of course, text, email, mail, address change notifications. That was a big effort this year when the post office said they're not going to let us use the P.O. box anymore. You got to go to the physical address. That was a major effort. At the end, I think we had maybe a dozen people that we had to start phone calling and just nagging them, hey, you got to change your address. But we got all the way to the end. Thank you, Raju and his team, for that. We had 100 people that, as part of that, we also did this switch to the ACH. Hey, if you want to do ACH, we'll give you a discount. We'll give you $25 as an incentive to switch to ACH. So we had 100 people take us up on that. And then y'all directed us to go ahead and start sending out notifications about deposit refunds. If you've got your deposit and you're in good standing, you can get it back. And so 350 customers received their deposit refunds as part of those efforts. Workforce, we just implemented a new performance measurement system with goal tracking, so we're looking forward. We're turning that on in March for all the new March folks, and for the February folks that didn't get reviewed in February, we're going to do that in March. So we've got this new software system, which looks pretty cool. And then, of course, the hub at Fate Station. If you haven't seen the hub, we can arrange a tour for you. I went up last week, and it was fantastic. Got to see and it's really neat to see all the people in there and the businesses that are the people you didn't even know about that are in town and doing business, and fantastic. So that is a great little system there for promoting startups, getting folks out of their garages, out of their home offices, and starting getting the economic growth going, with the intent, of course, to get them out of the hub and put them in brick and mortar, or see them expand and go to the highway, wherever they want to go. The food hall, We've got improvements. The consultant started work on the food hall, and we'll be working with the Parks Board, MDD, City Council, and that we've got I think we have a business owners downtown meeting coming up here in early March. And that is, of course, a restaurant, essentially a restaurant incubator. And so that's exciting. So that's going. Economic growth. We've got quarterly business meetings that Matt and Yvonne are doing with the businesses. We've got the new Keep Fate Beautiful program, just a little thing with music-friendly Texas. You've all seen this stuff kind of recently. And of course, we've reviewed, this is interesting. This is more not so much economic development, but this is Ryan's shop and Steve's shop. A lot of times cities get criticized for how slow it takes, how long it takes to get through a process. So they recently had as you saw from the last update, we had someone from the city of Tacoma come, and all we had to do is pay their travel. They basically the city of Tacoma donated their time, and they did a process improvement with us. We were able to shave off about 7 days in the permit review process. So to the private sector, time is money. So if we can get that, 16 days is fantastic. I think anything under 3 weeks for a permit is great. So we'll keep working on that. That is the update on what you all wanted to do last year and kind of where we are. And we can talk a little bit about it if you like. And then if we're done with that, then we can go back into kind of what we want to do next year.
And just quickly, any questions, Lance? Mark? Ellie? Alan?
Couple.
Go for it.
The 3 police spots we have open, are they triple certified or single certified?
The spots that we have open? We'll primarily recruit for police officers. So if we can get a certified officer, we'd love that.
Okay.
We're not opposed to sending people to the academies, but in this case, Chief's been effective, I think, in kind of trying to separate the certifications, and then where we have a chance to do some cross-pollination, if we can see some interest. So maybe there's a firefighter that we hired as a firefighter, but they have some interest in doing police work, or vice versa. If they have a police officer who wants to kind of dabble in the fire, we'll send them to the academy.
Okay.
We're focusing on hiring police and fire. Yeah.
Cool, excellent. And then you mentioned the 3.4 per 1,000 staff ratio.
Mm-hmm.
What is the average for North Texas cities our size?
I don't know if we ran an average, but
Okay. Would
I
you
think
mind sending that to us?
I did a quick. Yeah, I could take a look for you. I ran Rockwall's real quick, just as a quick comparison. Rockwall is thin. I mean, Rockwall is very efficient. They have a low tax rate. They're a large city. I used 50,000 population. I ran it real quick in my calculator today because I thought we might get a question about this. But
We were a poor city and a full-service city, meaning we did water, solid waste, all of it, and ours was like 7.4.
yeah, and that city doesn't have a lot of money either. As you mentioned, you're a poor city. Rockwall does have a lot of money, but they don't like to spend it, just like us. This is a good attribute, right? They have seven per 1,000. Of course, but they have recreation. You look at the recreation programs. They have separate fire and police now. They have a lot of staff. Matt's unit that he came from, economic development, has a lot. How many staff in the economic development office? 4, so double, essentially double. So they're a little bit bigger. I think I imagine Roy City would come in between Rockwall and Fate in their employee count per 1,000.
Yeah, thank you.
So we'll grab some stats for you.
Hey, just a
around
second,
the
yeah.
Metroplex.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, quick question. I know during the charter meeting, microphones, we're trying to listen to them. Poor Jennifer was having to, she was cutting in and out using the hand mics and things like that. Is there a way we can kind of get it working? All the mics can be.
So let me just jump.
I'm speaking to you from a new microphone.
Oh, okay.
These were installed just this is our first.
You're not having to Celine Dion it over there, are you?
Okay.
Okay, good.
I've
Yeah, but also-
tried, nobody appreciates it, but yeah, Michael Wright and his team, did actually get that installed a couple weeks ago, and it sounds much better over here and much more
Yeah, I know. I used the
functional.
portal to text Vicky going, I can't hear Michael on that one. The other one was last year. I know everybody had issues with the website, being able to search through the website. Has that been corrected, or are we working on
We are
that?
we're in the midst of, where's Shelby? She's having nightmares about the website. So I think we're almost there. We're almost there with the new website. It goes live. What do you think? How many more weeks or days?
A couple more weeks, if that's we do. Okay. Sorry. So the website is anticipated to go live in about 2 weeks, give or take. I do just want to caution that we are still making final edits and things like that, but the broken links, the broken forms, all of that has been addressed. So for everybody, if you do see something, please let us know so that we can make sure and address that. But we do look to have a new website in about 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay, thank you.
And then I'd just say one other thing about the website too. We are moving a lot of our applications and forms online are PDFs. They'd be required to print, fill out, sign, scan back. Hard to do. We are moving to all electronic on that as well. We found a pretty good price for a software that integrates with our system, and we'll be able to do all that electronic signatures and make it much easier to submit applications and permit.
Okay. Scotty, any questions?
Okay, couple of things. First off, on the staff to population ratio, is that decrease because of current openings that we have in the staff, or is that decrease because we've not increased staff as it relates to population growth?
Those are authorized numbers, so that's like a budget number. So the actual count is a little bit lower than that because we've got some open jobs. And we'll always kind of have an open job. People will resign or retire at some point. But now we'll continue that. I think the budget, we're about 104 positions. So that'll continue. Probably the population is what's pushing so as the population number pushes up, I think that's the factor. We're holding pretty steady. We increased mostly public safety staffing, but we didn't add a lot of civilians last year. The only civilian added was council required that the code enforcement officer, so we got that put in.
So next question, just on the sales tax growth, you threw a number out there that we budgeted 38% sales tax growth for the fiscal year, but year-to-date growth is only 4%. Is that going to be a concern for us later in the year, or are we making up for that?
When we mixed some statistics there, which I think goes, Raju could probably explain it better than I could, but part of the increase was that the prior year's budget didn't factor in. We had so much revenue up over the budget, so as we moved that, but in the budget process for the prior year, we moved that number way up.
So the 38% is budget over budget,
It's
with
budget.
the 4%, so
It's budget,
actual over
yeah, it's
actual.
budget, so it's a budget number compared to a prior budget number, which was low. So it's more of a, but if you're looking at actual first 4 months of the fiscal year last year, actual first 4 months of the fiscal year this year, 3.6%.
Short answers, we're on track, though.
We are a little bit low from our budget, probably 4% off, between 2 to 4%. Maybe 2, but that doesn't include a lot of the new businesses coming in. And it doesn't include a lot of the of course, it doesn't include any residents who aren't here yet. We get a lot of sales tax from online
That's fine.
orders.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
So we think we'll make
Mark,
it.
Courtney, you guys good? All right. That's our questions. Thank you. Next part.
All right, so that is exactly that cycle we've been talking about. You all set some expectations. You delivered some resources. Staff carried forward your directives and is now bringing you back a report. You were asking questions about whether or not they were marked, on mark, off mark. This is exactly the type of governance that should be happening. It's exactly the type of conversation. But had we never written it down in the first place, then how would we know if we were ahead or if we were behind, right? So this sets up this next piece, which is, okay, we know where we are right now. We know things around us are going to change whether we want them to or not. And so let's figure out what it is that our expectations are moving forward. So point in time, I always do a SWOT analysis ahead of these because I think it's really important for you all to see where you feel there are current strengths, where you think there's weakness that should be addressed, an opportunity that could be capitalized on, or a threat to the long-term success that we might be able to mitigate in some way. And so individually, this is what came back from you all. And some of you had very similar comments, so some of these are combined, but that it's still a desirable community. People want to be here. That's a great indicator of a community that is healthy, that people find value in it and want to move their families or to invest their money in a community. And so, and you saw there's been new business development, which is also really important. So this is all very positive. You have a growth corridor. Now this shows up on a couple of lists. You're able to grow. I work with a lot of cities in the Metroplex that can't grow. They're completely bound. There's nowhere for them to go, and so it's either you increase density or you just hope for the best because there's no room for businesses, there's no room for new homes, and your resources are kind of finite at that point. So it is a positive in the ability for you to plan to do something with that growth corridor, growth tract. That you're preparing for growth. So there has been investment in infrastructure, there's been investment in services, so that if growth continues in some way, that we're prepared to accept that growth in a more managed way, and that we can at least supply those necessary resources to it as it continues. Good infrastructure being part of that, being prepared for that growth. Talented people, being able to attract a talented workforce, a talented council, talented people in your community that are engaged. Public safety, being a very safe community. I think almost every single one of you mentioned that, and that's a tremendous asset. Was it, I don't want to quote it wrong, 6th safest? I got it right, yes. See, I do listen. But that's huge. You know, there's a lot of communities that don't have that feather in their cap, and so it is, that's important. But as you heard, you know, if your ratio of employees goes down as your population goes up, then at some point that service level starts to deteriorate in some way. So we always want to keep our eye on, you know, do they have the appropriate level of resources to continue to provide the same level of service or better? Strong finances, being in a strong financial position, having strong reserves, and low tax rate, and then well-run services, feeling that there's a value for the services that are provided to the residents. Weaknesses. There is some divisiveness on council at this point. Again, you want there to be discourse. That's healthy. But it was a feeling of, and I think the word used earlier was, now I've forgotten it, but basically camps, like kind of dividing and not being open to working together. Communicating with residents, we want to improve that, we want to increase that. It sounds like there's some pretty major things that are in the works or have recently come on board that are going to help with that. But getting out to them, but then also being able for them to us, I think is important. So making sure that we're keeping that two-way communication open. Promoting fate, we could do a better job of identifying ourselves, distinguishing ourselves, inviting people into the community to sources in different ways. A limited tax base. So you all have these MUDs. You also have probably less commercial than you might desire or you might want. There's also the restraints, which is the next one, taxing restraints that are placed on you by the state. And then the expectation that taxes will remain low here. So there's some constraints that you all are kind of working with that make you have to have harder conversations related to the money that you do bring in and how it's going to be spent. Revenue source reduction. So that one was particular to if the state were to do something that's negative to local governments in this legislative session, as they've done in the past. But it was also you have a large portion of your revenue comes from permits. And so if something changed there, then that would have to be a discussion. You already talked about one revenue change that was made, which was the street fee. So trying to balance all of those things and make sure that we're not depleting the services that people have come to know and expect, but really trying to be as thoughtful about those decisions as we can be. Traffic, increasing traffic, a feeling that we're getting overcrowded, that there's just too many people and not enough, lanes of road for people to get through. And I'm sure it's cyclical in times of day, but there's a feeling that is taking hold. Citizen understanding and perceptions, like really trying to be more strategic and deliberative with trying to engage our public, so that we have more of that two-way communication, so that people understand the issues rather than just, are opposed to them just because they're opposed. And that's what you're supposed to do with government these days. And then listening. We could do a better job of just being good listeners to the community. What is the community saying? What are parts of the community saying? Are we listening to everybody who has a voice in a way that's meaningful? And do people feel open to actually being able to voice their opinions because we're receptive to it? Opportunities. Becoming more attractive to businesses. Are there those things that others around us might be doing that we might be lacking, or are there things that are in our control that might make us more attractive to business development? Diversifying the tax base, trying to figure out whether that is some additional commercial development, is that some other type of fee, is that some opportunity with grants, but basically trying to turn over every leaf and see where we can find additional resources. A better planned and smart development, so really thinking from today on and taking a fresh look at how we're growing and changing and moving to make sure that we're all still on the same path and that we are considering new perspectives potentially that may not have been voiced in the past. You have open land, and so being really smart about what you do with that open land. Keeping the tax rate low. We saw that as a kind of a weakness where you have a strength. You've got this low tax rate, but it does limit your ability to do certain things. And so, a low tax rate is great if it provides for the services that you want, but having those good discussions about what people expect and what we can afford. Potentially a hotel. I said it to Michael today. I was like, when you have a hotel in this town someday, I'm going to be able to stay here. But yeah, having a hotel, that's another revenue source potentially, and that's also additional people who might be in the community for some period of time. More community building events, so bringing the community together, having a more complete or known identity. I'm hearing this from all the smaller cities around the Metroplex. I hear it from everybody. We're trying to set ourselves apart. We're trying to create our image, our identity, so people will want to come here, not necessarily to move here, but to visit here or to come spend their resources here, or to come to an event or something like that. Being strategic with our public relations, we talked about, there's a lot of tools that are in the works right now, but really trying to reach out to those populations who may feel that they're being overlooked, or maybe don't have the level of information, or maybe to them in a different way that would make them understand better how they can be part of their government. And then staying ahead of service demands. So again, eye on the horizon. If we know these things are going to happen, if we have these targets or predictions, are we able to provide the same service level or a better service level, and what's it going to take to do that? So always trying to look at that rather than allowing it to sort of dwindle next move, and then just trying to play catch up. And then threats. The legislature, loss of local control. Every single Texas city and Missouri cities, Kansas City, everywhere I go, it seems like they're all saying that, because that seems to be a kind of likely target at this point. And so, what are the other things that you currently have the ability to control in some way that may be eroded or limited over time? If the council dynamics were to take a slide toward the negative, where we can't be productive together anymore, that would be a threat, because you all obviously have a job to do and the public depends on it. Looking short-term rather than trying to look long-term, so making short-term, short-sighted decisions without the perspective of or the long-term view, so that we make sure that even those short-term moves are with the thought of how is this going to pay it forward long-term, so that we're not throwing good money after bad. Competition from neighboring cities. So are they getting some of the businesses or the opportunities? They have something that we may not have to offer, or because there's a perception or whatever, but we want to be competitive. That showed up as an opportunity as well. So we want to make sure that we're competitive with those neighboring cities so that we have the same opportunities. Uncontrolled population growth. So this is one of those that's probably going to be a big discussion for us at the next session is really, what does that look like? What is uncontrolled? How do we define that? Or how does controlled defined? Or, what is it moving forward that we think is the right balance for the community that people want to be in? People want to be here, so there has to be a discussion about that.
If you don't mind, a quick question. So this is consistent, you have to think about this consistently with state law, right? So you can't.
Of course.
Okay, right, I think that's one thing we have to, the council probably understand, that there's the state governing body has decided certain rules, and they have been very clear that local city councils should not work around those rules or trying to find ways around those rules because of, feedback from the citizens. So I think, in their article out, maybe next time we can talk about is the city council are taking the heat for decisions by the state.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Mainly because we're here, right? You see us every day, you don't ever see them. So just, I think, not tonight, but when you think about this, has been context of the state. Number two, I get it, local control, we should say, I don't know if you change this or not, but local decision-making is much more power word these days. I don't know, I'm not sure why anymore, but just maybe that's just a thought for you. All right,
No,
thank you.
for sure. It is definitely the more palatable language these days is
I don't know
local
why, but
decision-making.
it makes our two state reps happier, and
Yeah.
right now, that would be good.
Absolutely. Losing touch with resident desires. So if we're not engaging them regularly, then do we know what the actual, feeling in the community is currently? I like to see that you use a community survey tool. I think that's really important because it gives you a broader perspective from folks who, in almost every community, it's that 80-20 rule where 80% of people are satisfied, and so they just don't really engage. And then you might have 20% who are, in some way unsatisfied or dissatisfied, and have a particular area of interest that they represent loudly. And so whatever we can do as an organization to hear, I think, is really important so that we know the broader perspective and the broader sentiment, rather than just listening to sort of the few that are incensed about something, or have a particular mindset. Personal interest over community need. So again, not focusing broadly enough, focusing on kind of those that got us elected. And so we want to make sure that we're broadening that and really thinking of the whole every time we have these discussions. The minor opinions, our council, we used to always joke. It was a very clear decision. We all kind of felt like we knew where they were going, and that one person would stand up and all of a sudden somebody fell off and voted a different way because of the emotion. And that meant that they weren't sure enough in the decision that they were making to start with. If emotion can sway you at the last minute, right? So there was something wrong with our process that allowed that to be, the straw that broke the camel's back, and the one person fell off of what they knew was the right thing to do, but the emotion of the argument got to them. So again, making sure that we've got our full and complete discourse and discussion so that we can explain to that person why we can or can't do what they wanted, but that it doesn't knock us off course because they got upset at the dais. And then keeping up services and public safety in particular with growth. So if we were to let that slide. So a lot of these things you see as opportunities and threats, so we want to make sure that we have these things moving forward as an opportunity for us to get ahead or to do the right thing in advance, so that they don't become threats of something that we're losing or not able to provide in the future. Any thoughts on any of those things, or anything need more explanation?
Is that the four?
That
Yeah.
was SWAT.
Cody, any questions?
So are we discussing, this is my first strategic planning meeting, so I just want to understand the process. Are we going over right now what we want to work on in the future? Or is this going to be a meeting, just you're presenting it, and then next week or whenever we meet again, we're talking about those things.
So tonight, where we're gonna get is to the big categories, and we wanna make sure that those are still the right big categories, so that when we come back in a month, we can build out all of the other pieces that Michael talked about from the last plan, that these are the things we think are important to those big categories. So it was infrastructure, public safety,
Right.
those kinds of things. So we wanna
Right.
make sure, so you'll see a composite list of what I asked you all for focus areas to make sure that they fit within those, or maybe we need to reshuffle them or say them in a different way.
For sure. Yeah. So I was very happy when you brought up the community identity. I know me and you spoke about that. And I think that Fate has a really cool opportunity here to be known for something unique. Right now, we've been called like a pass-by town. You know, people just drive through Fate. We don't really have that thing that we're known for. So I think that having this workshop and focusing on really what is Fate going to be known for going forward? What's going to bring in the outside traffic so that people spend money here, so that people do visit here, even eventually maybe have vacations here if we can get a hotel, if we get bed and breakfasts and stuff like that. So I'm excited to hear those types of ideas going forward.
Hey, Mark?
No question.
One comment when it comes to tax burden. So Fate really has got 5 or 6 different rates of tax burden across the city, depending on where you live, depending on which ISD you're part of, depending whether you have a MUD, whether you have a PID, whether you have no MUD, no PID. The whole tax burden thing, I think that at least I try to keep in mind is, and you know, I've been told many times, is it doesn't matter what the other taxing burdens are. It only has to do with the city. But that, in my opinion, that's a wrong way to look at it, and that's why we kept tax rates low. But you got to have people to be able to afford to live in the city in order to get the taxes that you're going to get out of them. And if the tax burdens get too wonky, depending on where you live, you're either gonna drive single-family home ownership out of the city, and it's gonna turn into nothing but rentals or investments, or you're not gonna be able to bring people in, period. So, you know, from a taxing perspective, we need to keep that very much in forethought.
A lot of the cities that I work with are talking about affordability, not affordable housing, but affordability of people to live from, you know, young couples all the way until they're senior citizens and you know, where they can go. But taxing is absolutely, it's part of that note. It's part of what people have to spend. And so, yeah, it's that one. You all have a unique situation with the way that you're kind of put together. I have not experienced this with other cities yet, with MUDs being inside the city limits and that sort of stuff. It's just different. It's very, I think it's very unusual.
And I think the other challenge is we have 4 planned development agreements, almost on 1,000 acres of Fate that were signed prior to 2010, right? And I know a lot of people think this council should just, that's why I asked you the legal question, right? There's an expectation that we should just violate our agreements. And we know that's not a reasonable position to take, right? That's why I asked the question about that. And Michael, I don't know how we're going to handle this in the next session when we do this, but the impact of the bills on the tax rate setting, there's a massive changes coming. I know next will be like midstream, so I'm not sure how we deal with those issues as the council. Yeah. What constraints do we get going forward?
And it's happening kind of around the country, so it's not unusual for some of these different states have already passed these kind of laws that if you raise $1 more, you got to go to an election, or if you have a new revenue source, you've got to go to election. And
yeah, and I don't know how to just think about how to. I know, but there is one common theme. There's the 3.5% to 0% right now has, I don't know, 15 bills filed, I guess something like that, crazy number, which is going to pass, right? We know certainly it's going to pass no matter what. So, and then what's the impact of those? I don't have a great answer, but if we can just do that next, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah,
okay.
It is, but again, that's part of this. Like if we're not looking long-term and we're saying we're gonna do all of this stuff and we're gonna do it all this way, and then the rug gets pulled out from under us, then we haven't been as forward-thinking or thoughtful as we should be. And we know every 2 years at least, the legislature legislature may come in and do something that changes the picture
may?
for us.
Oh, they will.
And so we have, that's why this whole cyclical thing, things change over time, but we've got to be as smart as we can moving forward. But, you know, it's always, everybody wants lower taxes, lower my taxes, lower my taxes. And as soon as you say, okay, what service do you want cut? What do they say? Well,
No.
none.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
And so it's a tough position you're in. It's a tough position you're in to have to figure out what the right expenditure is on the right things and what those service areas are that are meaningful and those that maybe aren't as meaningful anymore.
But thank you, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right, so what's next on the agenda?
Okay, so focus areas. These are the things I asked you all, if you could focus every ounce of the council's attention on a specific area or issue right now, what would it be? And these are the things that came back. So economic development, I heard from multiple folks. The comprehensive plan, zoning decisions, what control do we have there and what changes could we make going forward? The future of public safety, what does it look like? How do we maintain service levels? Does, you know, something about its structure change over time? Growing the sales tax base, infrastructure, standing up for local decision-making. I just changed that on the fly for you, Mayor.
And there you go.
Reputation building, which also meant like image building or identity building. So who are we as a community and what do we have to offer? And then bringing the community together. So all of these are areas that had, at least one of you said, but most of them had multiple folks saying that these were really important ideas or focus areas we should be thinking about. So if we compare that to this list, which there is one missing from this because y'all must have added it last year. But you had the focus areas of public safety, fiscal resiliency and accountability, sense of community, sustainable infrastructure and services, and now there's service excellence and economic growth. Is that right? Are there 5 now?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll fix that for next time. That's my mistake. And so if we
Ours too.
compare those and we think service excellence, economic growth is also on this list, does anything on the right-hand side seem like it would not fit in one of the categories if you add in service excellence and economic growth on the left-hand side?
It's the right-hand side of the complete list, right? This, yeah, my right, I'm sorry.
I had to turn around.
I don't know, my personal opinion, this is probably a good list to go into the next session with. It'll take a lot more discussion, and I think we got some answers there. But I think generally, my personal opinion is this fits for this session. The next session, we need to have more conversations. Cody, what do you think? Mark? Lance? You good? He shook his head and he said good. So I was trying to interpret, well, I know him really well, so I'm thinking like, I was anticipating, okay. So I think this is a,
I think that there,
I knew
now that
it.
I really start thinking about it, there still has to be a thing about governance and appropriate governance.
Okay.
yeah, we can add that, that's fine. I think just, let's make this list a working list the next time, right? We can think about it, we can get, staff can come back and make recommendations on how we deal with some of the issues. But I think what we really need to understand is, people get tired of hearing me saying this, it is what happens in the next 2 months in Austin. There are some serious bills coming out that will substantially change some stuff in Texas, right? Unfortunately, Michael's right. There's some states who have already passed this and are already pointing to them, right, do that. The second thing is we have to understand the legal ramifications of certain suggestions that will be made. Right, that is also important. We cannot operate outside the law. I know some people maybe want us to do that, but the majority of people in the city would tell us not to do that, right? Right, so that's my 2 underlying as we come together. Let's talk about some, can you do this or not? Can you do certain things or not legally? And Michael, I already talked to Jennifer a little bit about that. We'll talk more about it. But, okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Is this your last slide?
So hold on, what specifically, right versus left? If you look at comprehensive plan, zoning decisions, standing up for local decision-making, I think that all falls into a governance category.
Yes, and I think, so they had one that was service excellence and economic growth, which is, I think, where you had been placing. And so maybe that one needs to be more specifically
Okay.
governance and service excellence or something
Well, yeah, well, to me, service excellence is really how the city operates and how they internally and how they operate externally to the citizenry, right? What is that? If you've got poor processes in planning and I can't get permits for a month, right? And we've taken it down to 16 days, that's a certainly improvement in service excellence, right?
Okay. So
Getting away from paper.
Right.
Okay, so,
I will add
Okay.
those blocks, and I will send this back to you all so you can chew on it
Okay.
ahead of when we get back together, because what happens next
okay, I
is-
think, is this, okay, March, okay, thank you.
Yes, this is what happens next, not tonight, but in March. So what I'll do is I'll send this back to you so you can chew on it and kind of think about, are those still the right categories? Are they still the right priorities for the organization? And then we'll start discussing at what level you should be exerting your expectations of those so that you can say things like, we want to focus on blank under that category moving forward. So we will start establishing some of those strategies. Probably not going to get down to this is how we want to change a process because that's really staff level, but this is our expectation of the service we're going to provide. So that is what we will focus our efforts on next time. But again, I'll send you this list with those 2 additions, including governance as one, and we'll figure out if it fits somewhere or if it needs to stand alone. But that'll be our jumping off point for next time.
Cool. Any more questions from the council? 24th, not next Monday? 24th? I know, that was so
Sorry, I
fun.
said that earlier. I gave
I
everybody a
know,
panic
like,
attack.
I just verify and make sure we had it up there. Okay, if that is it, is it?
Yeah.
Thank you so much, I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, Vicki, what's next?
Item 5, adjournment.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
I second.
Vote? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Nay? Motion passes 6-1. Bye.